This is a state of emergency for us. It's a state of emergency for Indigenous people.
Tonight, families who have lost loved ones after interactions with law enforcement were on Parliament Hill today.
Certainly support any sort of ideas in terms of bridging the divide in the city.
A massive rail yard is being considered for relocation. Some have hopes of a possible urban reserve.
Well, I've been drawing since I could hold a pencil.
And the story of a Haida Gwaii man reconnecting with his culture through art. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Families of Black and Indigenous peoples who have died while in police custody or after interactions with police were on Parliament Hill Tuesday, calling for a public inquiry. Between August 29th and September 18th of this year, a 20-day stretch, a total of 9 Indigenous people died following interactions with police forces across the country. This has led to renewed calls for greater oversight of the RCMP and municipal police forces. Laura Holland is a Wet'suwet'en woman. Her son, Jared Lawns, was killed by RCMP officers in Campbell River, British Columbia on July 8th, 2021. At a press conference, she expressed the frustration of families.
This is a state of emergency for us. It's a state of emergency for Indigenous people. We're being killed on the streets, in our homes, and everywhere. And no one is saying anything. No one cares. We want you to care. Even if you don't care, at least do something. Say something. Speak up. Stand with us. It's time.
To election news now, and New Brunswick has a new premier. Liberal Susan Holt won a convincing majority last night after 6 years of progressive Conservative leadership that was difficult for the First Nations in the province. Angel Moore reports.
Wolastoqey. Walalan.
That is the Wolastoqey and Mi'kmaq words for thank you, the first words spoken by New Brunswick Premier-designate Susan Holt at her acceptance speech. Wolastoqey Chief Alan Polchis Jr. says he is hopeful with her new leadership.
I feel great today. It gives me hope for a better today and a better tomorrow for all of the Indigenous people, but more importantly, for all New Brunswickers to make to have a leader that wants to continue to do change for our people.
The Liberal win comes after 6 years of progressive Conservative rule that clashed with First Nations leaders, like Premier Blaine Higgs cutting the First Nations tax agreements and refusing calls for an Indigenous-led inquiry into policing and the justice system.
For the last 6 years, we've been struggling, especially for the last year, with agreements being pulled underneath us and not allowing us to do the good things that we do for our nations.
4 years ago, the 6 Wolastoqey chiefs filed a title claim that covers half the province. During his campaign, Higgs said all the land in New Brunswick was ceded, and the Wolastoqey claim puts private property owners at risk. Polchis calls that misrepresentation of history fear-mongering.
We are not taking any lands away from homeowners, farm owners, anyone that owns land. Anyone that owns land here in New Brunswick, we are not taking that away from you. Let me be clear with that.
Polchis says all the chiefs are meeting to discuss the new leadership, and Premier-elect Holt is invited.
And the conversation moving forward gives me good hope with this new government. They understand, respect, and willing to, of course, guide us and walk with us on this healing journey that we're in today.
Holt is New Brunswick's 45th premier, the first woman. Her Liberals took 31 of 49 seats. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Djibouti, also known as Halifax.
To the election in Saskatchewan now, where a debate last week touched on several key issues. But one area that was not addressed was Indigenous issues and the government's relationship with Indigenous peoples. CTV's Wayne Mantika has more on what Saskatchewan's two leading political parties are promising.
The NDP believe the government has a duty to consult First Nations on matters affecting Indigenous people.
You've heard me talk about the duty to consult. We're going to enshrine that. We're also going to be working with honoring the treaty inherent rights in this province.
The NDP point to the sale or lease of Crown land, where it feels adequate consultation has not taken place in the past.
So what we're saying is leave those 10% of Crown land left so that the Indigenous people can exercise their inherent and treaty rights.
The Saskatchewan Party points to partnerships with First Nations on economic projects like the Urgent Care Centre in Saskatoon.
It's imperative that a government is focused on the opportunities that are coming to our province and to our communities, that everyone has an opportunity to benefit with that.
Interpersonal violence was of concern to this group, which rallied outside the legislative building, a concern which disproportionately impacts Indigenous women.
We have in Saskatchewan the highest rate of domestic violence. We have children and women living daily in fear of our lives.
Kathy Ballon says her daughter was murdered.
This has got to change. We got to speak louder. Women have to stick together. We need help.
Traditionally, there has been lower Indigenous voter turnout. The political parties are encouraging their participation so their voices are heard. Wayne Mantika, CTV News, Regina.
A massive rail yard near downtown Winnipeg is being considered for relocation. With a feasibility study underway, so are talks of what could take its place. Reporter Sav Jones has spoke with a community advocate to hear about his dream for the urban land.
This century-old rail yard near downtown Winnipeg spans more than 450 acres, or about 2 square kilometers. Known as the Winnipeg Yards, it's part of a decades-old conversation to possibly relocate rail lines throughout the city. The Winnipeg Yards currently act as a dividing line between the North End and Central neighborhoods.
For the longest time, there's always been like, oh, you're on that side of the tracks, I'm on this side.
But now a 2-year-long, $200,000 feasibility study is underway to see if relocation is possible, and it has some residents talking. Josh Niepanak has an idea to bring unity to the area in urban reserve.
When I envision this, I see like a green space and, nations in Treaty 1 coming together, setting up their teepees so that, anybody, the relatives out on the street aren't houseless. Youth in Carrick could come here, learn about their culture, experience, what traditional living looks like, even if they remain, an off-reserve individual. And just ceremonies to take place right here in the open land.
Niepanak grew up in the North End for a lot of his life and remembers finding few ways to access his culture while being a youth in care. It's a struggle many Indigenous people face while living in a city, and Winnipeg has the highest urban Indigenous population in Canada at over 100,000 people, according to the 2021 census, many of whom live in the North End and central neighborhoods.
Having, the sacred land here, or having a land where I could see my own culture, or where I could go and, sit in a teepee, listen to an elder, or attend a ceremony here, would have been so much needed.
The 65-acre and former Kapyong Barracks site in southwest Winnipeg will be home to an urban reserve in the coming years, but it is not centrally located. Niepanak sent his idea to Premier Wab Kinew for consideration. Indigenous Economic Development Minister Ian Bushy responded to Niepanak's letter. He said the idea would have significant long-term implications, but many factors need to be considered. He outlined crucial steps like conducting feasibility and environmental impact studies, engaging with the community and stakeholders, determining the associated costs, and considering zoning and land use plans. But she continued that the process is complex and challenging, requiring careful planning, coordination, and support from partners in all levels of government. Leah Gazan is the Member of Parliament for Winnipeg Centre, which borders on the Winnipeg Yard. She says she's open to all ideas of what could go there if the tracks are moved.
I know that because of the contamination of the land, there's a lot of questions in terms of whether it would be safe for that in the future. I'm not sure, but certainly support any sort of ideas in terms of bridging the divide in the city.
Josh says if the rail yard isn't moved, or if something else goes there instead, the idea should still be considered elsewhere.
You know, because the need is there. The need for people to have access to land-based activities where it's low barrier in terms of, you know, like you shouldn't have to go like 3-4 hours out of the city to do a land-based activity. You know, for it to be like right here for everybody to experience and enjoy.
He hopes Indigenous representation and consultation will be part of the feasibility study to ensure their thoughts are heard for what happens next to this Treaty 1 land. Sav Jones, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Sav. A bill that formally recognizes the Haida Nation in British Columbia continues to make its way through Parliament. On Monday, Bill S-16 was up for discussion at the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee. The bill is currently at second reading. Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Anandasangri was one of the witnesses who spoke to the committee. He said the proposed legislation contains two basic things.
That both Canada and British Columbia legally recognize the Haida Nation holds inherent rights to governance and self-determination. And two, it will affirm that the Council of the Haida Nation is authorized to make decisions on these rights. They will be able to act as a distinct legal entity with the capabilities of a natural person.
Time for a quick break. Still to come, a Haida Gwaii artist who's making rare guitars. Stick around. Welcome back. The government of Yukon released a new report that identifies barriers to Indigenous recruitment and retention in the territory's public service. Statistics show 13% of the government's workforce is Indigenous, which is less than the territory's 22% Indigenous population. The government is mandated to make those numbers equal under the Yukon First Nation final agreements. The report found Indigenous peoples experience challenges at every stage of employment. That includes a perceived lack of flexibility to accommodate family or community responsibilities, biases, stereotypes, and challenges navigating the online recruitment system. The report's findings were used in the development of an operational plan to improve Indigenous representation within the government.
We are better as a government if we actually reflect the communities that we represent. When you have a government that is not representative, then you're not representing the whole Yukon.
This next story is about a man who says art has not only reconnected him with his culture, but has also been a source of healing. APTN's Tina House has that story.
Gregory Williams says music is a big part of who he is.
Well, I've been drawing since I could hold a pencil. My mom was very supportive, and I grew up as a Ukrainian Catholic. My parents separated when I was quite young and moved away from Haida Gwaii when I was a child.
Williams said he returned to Haida Gwaii when he was 18 and reconnected with his Haida father's side of the family. He said he was incredibly inspired by Haida master carvers like Jim Hart and the late Jim Edenshaw, to name a few. Today, Gregory Williams is preparing to do a tattoo. He says being able to express his artistic ability in this way has given him so much freedom as an artist.
It's that connection of skin marking and tattooing on people to help them evolve as a person, spiritually and mentally. For me, it's a reminder, you know, and taking a part of your ancestry and putting it on your skin.
But tattooing isn't the only way he expresses his love of art. Williams is also a skilled jewelry carver. He makes everything from bracelets to pendants. In 1998, he and his brother Chris began to work at the Larvae factory in Vancouver, where they learned the art of making guitars. They came up with the idea to make custom-made guitars with elaborate painting and adorning them with art made out of abalone using unique Haida art. The bridge on the guitars is also shaped like a canoe. That's when the brothers started their company, Wolastoqey Guitars, along with 2 other partners they met at the guitar factory. They made 70 custom guitars in total, and even gifted one of those rare guitars to musician Sarah McLaughlin.
The spruce is salvage wood from Masset, and the kerfinger bracing is also salvage spruce from Masset, which is the north end of Wolastoqey. And this was done by it's blowdown wood given to us by a fellow named Trevor Lavoie at the time. And our goal at the time was to have the company move home and use like salvaged alder, yew wood, and spruce to make a guitar all indigenous to Wolastoqey.
The company eventually dissolved, but he says he is proud of what they were able to accomplish.
Me as an artist 24 years ago and now is night and day, to say the least, you know. I look at the stuff that I did then and I just like, wow. But everything happens for a reason.
For Williams, he says he has a lot of people to thank for getting him here and just wants to continue to evolve as an artist and to take care of his family, one tattoo at a time, making his dreams come true. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Time for one last break. Still to come, the passing of a former chief in Saskatchewan. Stay with us. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And Fran Etzel was at the Ross River Airport, located about 4 hours northeast of Whitehorse. She decided to share with us this view. Sky full of beautiful colors and cloud formations. Thanks, Fran. You too can share with all of us by sending your photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, showers and 21 in Halifax, sun's out and 20 in Charlottetown. -1 with snow in Kuujjuaq, 15 in Nain. 23 with showers in Montreal, rain, and 13 in Val-d'Or. 12 with showers in Sault Ste. Marie, rain, and 10 in North Bay. 7 in Thunder Bay, 5 in Sioux Lookout. 6 in God's Lake, 8 in Norway House. Sunny and 10 in Winnipeg, 13 under sunny skies in Dauphin. 11 in Regina, 9 in Saskatoon. 8 and cloud in Meadow Lake, 6 in Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, 5 in High Level, Peace River, and Fort McMurray. Cloudy and 8 in Edmonton, 12 in Lethbridge. Showers and 11 in Vancouver, 9 in Kamloops. 5 in Prince George, snow, and 2 in Smithers. Flurries and -2 in Old Crow, snow and +1 in Whitehorse. Sunny and 0 in Yellowknife and Norman Wells. -5 with snow in Sax Harbor, 0 in Pawlatuck with snow. -2 in flurries in Chesterfield, flurries and 1 below in Whale Cove. Snow and -12 in Resolute, 5 below, and snow in Joe Haven. Well, among those getting an early taste of snow is Calgary. It started falling Monday afternoon and continued into the late evening and made for a bit of a messy morning commute thanks to the frigid temperatures. Road conditions were icy and led to several crashes. Now many in Calgary are rushing to get ready for winter.
I feel like it should always snow after Halloween.
Last winter I had sort of 2 very minor sliding incidents, and that's prompted me to make sure I have winter tires on.
It can be tricky right now to book a winter tire change in Calgary with appointments in high demand. Crews have been out clearing major roadways. Always snows on Halloween here. At least 2 people have died in BC after a weekend of torrential rain from an atmospheric river system that triggered mudslides and road washouts in coastal regions. And concern is growing in Coquitlam as the search for a missing man enters its 3rd day. 59-year-old Robert Belding was last seen near the Coquitlam River at 5 p.m. local time Sunday. Coquitlam Search and Rescue have been working to find him ever since, using bike teams, helicopters, and hikers. The river has been flowing hard and fast since the weekend, and there are concerns Belding may have fallen in. First, Indigenous Governor General of Canada is our guest on Face to Face tonight. We sat down with Mary Simon at Meadow Hall shortly after the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. One of the many topics we touched on was the rise in residential school denialism.
Well, I don't really know why. I think there are people that don't believe it happened. I mean, all you have to do is look at the history of the country and the way the residential schools were operated. That's not coming from Indigenous people. Indigenous people broke it open, but the victims were Indigenous people. So it was a system that was set up to do what it did, was basically to destroy who you were as an Indigenous person. So I think that the denialism is out there. I mean, I don't know if you can get rid of it.
And you can catch our whole interview with Governor General Mary Simon in just a few minutes' time. Today, members of the Wolastoqey and the Meadow Lake Tribal Council are grieving the loss of their former chief, Richard Ben. Ben served on the council for Wolastoqey before becoming chief and later tribal chief of the Meadow Lake Tribal Council. Family, friends, and community members are sharing memories of Ben on social media, honoring his positive spirit, determination, and leadership. Later this week, Ben will be brought back to his community of Wolastoqey from St. Walburg for his funeral. And condolences to Richard's friends and family. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. Of course, for news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And stick around, our interview with Governor General Mary Simon is up next on Face to Face. You can also catch an extended interview with Simon tonight on our APTN News YouTube page. Be sure to join Creason tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for your first look at the day's news. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Have a great night.